Hello, people at home. I've got to say that this is an Evolve event supported by Arts Council England, part of the British Library Living Knowledge Network. We have a hashtag on the Twitter, StoryTalks Live. We're streaming now to Norfolk, Middlesbrough, and the British Library. So hello to people. Hi. Hi, everyone in the room. Is everyone all right? Do you know what's going on? Yeah. Wicked. Right. My name is Stephen. I'm a writer from Birmingham. This is Inua. This is Kieran. They are both writers. We've known each other for a while, and I'm just really excited about talking about how we do and what we view about our own processes, whatever, it's fine. I've got some headings that I'd like to go through, but it's going to be really conversational. Later on, towards the end of it, we're going to talk for roughly an hour. I'm going to pick their brains and get the stuff that I want. Then there'll be some time for some questions, so I guess log them in your head. We've got a microphone afterwards, so if everyone's good. Has everyone eaten? All right, cool. All right, sweet. All right, so I've been starting with a quote. We've done two more of these before. Hi, thank you very much for coming, by the way. Right. I'm not saying playboy, it's fine. Right, look, I've been starting them with a quote, and I guess in regards to process and in regards to the process of actually writing stories, Steve Zalian, who wrote Awakenings and a bunch of other stuff, said, I think it is possible to know too much about a story when starting, right? And what I wanted to ask you, throw open to you to start us off is, how much do you need / like to know before you actually sit down to start? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What pops into your head?
I guess the first thing that pops into my head is that it sort of depends on what I'm writing for, I think.
Okay.
In some ways. Like, I think I've written a bunch of stuff for theatre that I perform that's like hour to 90-minute length, like storytelling show.
Yep. For your own mouth.
Yeah, for me to perform physically on stage. Mm-hmm. And there's something about that medium where that's quite immediate in its relationship with an audience. There's something about the kind of no-frills relationship with the writing that sort of clears my head somehow to be able to just like start writing stuff.
Okay.
And
without planning, you mean? Like,
and then a lot of that will get binned probably, but it's like, whereas writing for a medium that might like just demand much more story and much more like a screen thing or whatever, it's like it's a totally different way in.
Okay.
I think.
So maybe I think I know what you mean in the sense of it's almost like the amount of people are involved.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If it's like right, if I'm writing this for me to speak, that is like almost like the playing of let's find it what it is.
Yeah.
Whereas when people are waiting or people need to be brought on board, it needs to be clear about what this is or what this
sort of that, but also just that like screenwriting, storytelling has a way of like just like eating up lots of story, right? So there's like so much story. I mean, it's weird to talk about story as like a quantifiable thing, like this much story or this much story.
But they do,
but
right?
Like, do you know what I mean?
There's
so you've got you just got to kind of like conceive of it in a slightly different way or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So for example, if it was something for the screen, if it were a film thing, it would be you wouldn't just sit down blindly go. It would be conversations. Would it be?
Yeah, or like stuff that can actually feel quite creatively dead sometimes, but is maybe necessary, like a kind of treatment type thing where you're writing out.
You know where you're going.
Well, so you've got a map.
What do you think, man? Do you think does that make sense to you?
It depends on where you think writing starts.
Okay. Where do you think it starts then?
From when you have a line in your head or an idea of a character walking through a room, for me, you've started writing.
Okay.
And then the first stage of writing is trying to figure out what the character does, why he's in the room in the first place. And then the second stage is figuring out if he's the protagonist, who is his antagonist. If he wants something, who's stopping him from getting that thing.
Okay.
So even before I begin like writing, I still consider that writing.
Completely.
Similar, I think, with music, where if you have a melody running through your head, you're still writing. You haven't sat down to compose at a piano. So for me, I consider that writing, even if I haven't put a word on the page yet. It's just like a beat.
And can it be a while then? Can it be a while where I'm seeing this guy walking? How long are we talking, like, roughly? Like
years, sometimes. I just have this little beat. I've written whole plays in my shower.
Yeah.
I just haven't put them down yet. And then they just filter
out
and come back later. Yeah.
Is there lots of water in them?
Lots of water in them,
It makes sense.
So sometimes that can just go on for ages before I sit down and then I structure it.
Okay.
Maybe,
This is what I wanted to get to because there's like, because there are people who like to kind of like pledge allegiance to a certain camp, or like I'm flying by the seat of my pants, or I'm more of a planner. And I believe it depends not only on even the form, but like the particular idea might show itself more. But that was interesting you said, because once there is a period of it finding or landing or demanding maybe, and then you definitely do plan and structure.
I plan everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And what about, is there a stage thing for you, or do you work towards a plan? I know it depends on the form, I guess. But let's zoom in on one then, I guess. Yeah. One that you said. So if we say, because all three of us have written monologues that we have performed ourselves. Yeah. And still continue to do that, but have written for other people to perform on stage, written for the screen, written things that have been printed to hand over. Yeah. So I guess it's hard to kind of broadly approach them all. But for example, let's say if we're writing something that's going to be handed over. Yeah. In whatever form that takes. Yeah. Is it a sense of idea, this phase, I'm in the shower, I'm visualizing things, I'm doing stuff. Now, then in my mind, right now down to work, I'm going to plan. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
I'm not one of those writers who can like pitch, here's something and it's half formed, then I sit down and someone else helps me build the story. Yeah. I need to know everything as much as before I get into the room. And then things will shift and things will change, but I need to have a strong sense of a beginning, middle, and end, the conflict. So in my head, I see it like a join the dot picture, and I know the dots. Yep. And when I start writing is when I draw the lines. And sometimes, the lines might go that way. I miss the dot out and reorder the dots. But for me, I see the whole picture before I begin. Yeah,
before you even start. So it's not like you write a bit and then plan. You want to know it all. Yeah. Do you get a big paper out? What do you? Where do you plan? What does that look like on a?
I do it all digitally, which is maybe, I don't know. I need big screens.
Okay. So you have a big screen.
Yeah.
And is it like a map then? Does it look like a dot to dot?
I use this project management app called Things. On my phone, on my iPad, and on my Mac.
And it's all synced?
Yeah, it's all synced through clouds and stuff like that. So I use that to plan everything.
That sounds so futuristic.
Meticulously. It's really great. I swear by it.
Look at his face, that's his face. No, but it's gorgeous. No, but it's gorgeous though, right? Because that so clearly fits and you found that over this course of time. Yeah. The idea of that, does that make sense, but in a different language, or does it feel quite...
It makes sense. I feel kind of jealous of the clarity of the process.
What do you do? How do you post it?
I don't know, man. It all just feels so much more random than that.
Yeah. Can we say then, do you, like he said there, there's a period of time, there's the conception, there's the genesis of something.
Yeah, totally.
Then is there a point where it's like, right now, tea, Kit Kat, screen?
Yeah, but quite often that point is instigated in a way that I'm kind of dissatisfied with. But right now in my life, quite often that point is instigated less by a creative decision that this is what's going to happen, and more just like an absolute last minute panic fear of a deadline. It's like, well, I've just got a tea all night, or this is happening now because it has to. So that whole thing you were saying about writing whole plays in the shower or whatever, I definitely have spent the most valuable progress on a story or a project has sometimes happened on a walk or in the shower or whatever. But then sometimes I can fall into this really bad habit of because that's done, there's a little sneaky part of my brain that goes,
you finished.
Oh, that's done now. Yeah, you figured that out. And then the deadline creeps up and you're like, that's 4 days worth of work, doing that, getting that down on paper. And I've not done that, so I need to do it all now in a day. It just feels but I do use paper. I kind of need physical space, actually. What you were saying about digital, I kind of need...
what does that translate as? What does that look like?
So it looks obviously by necessity, I spend a lot of time, working in libraries and cafes and stuff as well. But when I'm working at home, it looks like a room that I write in, that I'm able to get up from the desk and stick something to the wall if I need to, that I'm able to pace if I need to.
Like a dedicated room, like a room that's just for that?
I've got a shed at the bottom of the garden. That my wife's also a writer, so we use that when it's not being used as a play space for the kids, we use it to write in and stuff. So,
like a rota of
Yeah, but it's not a rota. Like I say, it's all way more just cleaning kids' toys out of the way and then sticking post-its on the wall. Do you know?
Awesome.
But physical space, and for me, it is I can fall into quite a bad habit of being just like in this two-way relationship between me and my screen.
Yeah.
And I can fall into that habit really easily, but it is actually like not what I need. And so there comes a point when I notice it's like, no, I need to physicalize this.
Okay, that's really interesting as well, like the knowledge of that, which I don't know if would you agree then that that's something you learn over time, right? That's something that going through this process multiple times, you know that you can have something in sync, and the idea can start on the screen at home or wherever you are. Then I know I can go and have it here and still not lose some of that. Whereas I know for me personally, like I have to. So I will start somewhere and then I will walk and sit somewhere else, and I will walk and sit somewhere else, and I have to keep going. If I stay in the same place, I just really enjoy not doing anything. Yeah. So it's almost like the reward is to kind of sit in a place after the kind of walk. But because that kind of come at the beginning, knowing that, right? Or do you feel like you've learned that over time, or is that something that's...
Well, it's funny because you were talking about like the number of people involved, and actually even with a solo show, there's like other people involved, I think for me, it comes from a place of having started out as a writer. I didn't like set out to be a playwright or to be a writer. Like I came into all of this through making like really bonkers like collaborative, like intensely collaborative experimental device theatre as a student with all my mates, like very student-y thing, right? So I was used to making work in big groups of people in a way where like you're getting together in a room with a destination, an end point, which is a show that's going to happen. And so I started making solo shows kind of in that way. And so there was something about the way into writing being so like, kind of working with like mates that are musicians and stuff, sort of almost before the thing's finished or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And the story's evolving through informal creative conversation with those collaborators, and it's happening in a physical space of like a studio theatre or a rehearsal room. There's something about that like living physical creative environment that that I find very like creatively nurturing or something.
I think I need it. I mean, in the very minimum, like the dialogue. Like if the idea of locking away, like I've got friends who say they kind of will lock themselves away with it, create something, then come and thing. That makes sense to them. But if I don't get to bounce a little bit, I will just get lost, and I will convince myself that it's just disappeared into itself and stuff. But I think that it's also where do you stand on that? Do you think in terms of like who gets to share it during? Because you were saying I want to go in with a thing that I can see, so I can almost like not explain, but I can justify what this is, and then we can talk about how it might evolve.
I have usually when a play is commissioned or something, I have a dramaturg and I explain the ideas, and then we go back and forth. And
so is that early on, writing-wise, or is there already a draft?
I think I pitch an idea, and that's when I figured out what's supposed to happen. And then they tell me, go forth and write, and they ask me some questions just to crystallize the idea. Then I write, and then we talk about it. And there's some times where I out-clever myself, and I'm stuck. I'm like, I need to do all of this.
No, this is what you just said. So you out-clever yourself. So in the sense of what, you're trying to get ahead?
So there's this play I wrote. I don't know if they're ever going to put it on because it's mad. It's about 5 people and 2 meta-humans. They're not really humans. They are more energies that are conscious.
I'm in.
And a body, So they kind of, what happens, the story starts when these 5 people are frozen, and then their eternal beings or internal souls are given a super consciousness. And then they are sort of elevated, and they can watch what their human selves are doing, but they can't stop them from doing it. So in order to write their human selves going through their daily lives, their eternal selves watching themselves doing that, and then the sort of godlike energy beings interacting with that. So there's sort of 3 levels of storytelling happening at the same time, and they could all affect each other. And it was, that's what I'm saying.
No, but is there, sorry to interrupt you, Bum, but is there as this is coming out, whether it's in the shower or on the page or whatever it is there a form in your head of what that would take?
Yeah, so that was what the planning was, and just trying to figure out how to make sure everything, there was a lot of tension, lots of drama happening in 3 different levels of storytelling, and still having them interact with each other. That was a difficult bit.
Because you're talking about a live experience. You're not talking about that could happen in a novel, for
In a
example.
novel, that'd be easy,
Right.
but this is drama, so that's the bit where my
What
brain
were you
was just
gonna
like
do?
shut down. Yeah, so and it took me about maybe a year and a bit of just thinking hard and writing it down and then sharing it with the dramaturg and they explaining, okay, this might be the little, and even then it took them a while to really get the concept.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things, and that was a little bit too intense. I don't think I'm ever gonna try and do that again.
Well, that raises a really interesting point. I mean, in a sense that, like, in terms of sensibility, and in terms of when things start, would you say that you had, like, I found myself in like situations like this before, going like, oh, I tend to lean towards the small, or I think small, and then people go and think big, and I realised at one point I didn't even know what that meant really. I was just saying something to try and seem like I'd figured out what I was doing. I didn't really have a clue, but in sense of the scale of something like that, an idea that would show itself, and you would get excited by and run with that.
Yeah.
Does that happen a lot with your ideas? And I want, in terms of both of you, like, does your brain, does it feel like these things kind of go out, and do you feel like, even knowing as much as we know now, 10, 15 years on or whatever, like, that these things are possible, or have they hammered out the possibilities of us and we try and be logistic in the kind of writing of stuff?
I've
Do you know what I mean?
always thought like massively. When I was a kid, I used to read the Bible like a novel. And and Jesus Christ was just another superhero who could fly like Iron Man. Like, so I was born just thinking huge, big concept stuff, and I've been doing that since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I think part of what I learned from poetry was how to zoom into the minutiae of things. So I always think big, but try to see, okay, how can, a minute hand turning on someone's watch be the most important thing in the scene whilst the whole world is burning, and still make sure, there's a tennis match going between the micro and the macro. I've always thought massively.
Yeah.
I think I tend to start by thinking in a place that's maybe quite big, even if I wouldn't use that word, maybe broad, in terms of like a kind of social theme.
Okay,
or like
so
a
like
question.
what you're trying to say.
Yeah, like what is the wider like conversation that I'm looking to have about something that is bigger than the story. And from that point of view, it starts somewhere big, because that tends to be the starting point for me.
Okay.
And then or like, not always, sometimes. But then that kind of gets like, as whittled down into a story that like, it doesn't
represents.
that carries that conversation somehow. And like, and that story can be quite small, I think. Yeah, it's sort of it maybe has been in a lot of my stuff. Like hour-long theatre shows with 2 actors on stage or whatever. Do you know what I mean? That's quite small.
But it's small in the sense of what I'm witnessing there, but in terms of what I'm taking away to think about and to discuss, it's kind of more limitless, right, I guess.
I guess, maybe, yeah. I guess it's like you were saying that your answer used to be starting with the small, so I guess that's not what I would do. But nevertheless, like the scope of story doesn't necessarily need to be like some sweeping epic. Yeah.
And do you think that's changing over time? And we're lucky enough to get to write for these different mediums and be aware of what you can do and what you can play. And knowing you both, like, there's a sense of when it's not like we're going, right, this is the only one. We like, I'm don't want to speak for you, but like I like writing for this. I like the different muscles that get to be flexed and different ways of thinking. So do you feel that changing over time, in the sense of people talk about your voice or finding a voice? Cool, I get it. But there is also something potentially limiting in that, in a sense of, right, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And we've already kind of weirdly negated that somehow, because we've gone here and there and there. So there are some people who know us purely for one form who don't know us for another one, and vice versa.
Yeah, sure.
But do you feel yourself leaning towards things, or is there phases where one form is more exciting, or do you know what I mean? Like, is that are you even thinking about that at all, or are you just going with what comes up?
I'd love for it. Like, this conversation is making me realise like things that I would really want to have more clearly in my life and in my work. I would love for my decision making around my work to be as creatively motivated as that, to be as purely about like, oh, I really want to stretch this particular storytelling muscle in this direction, and therefore it's in this medium.
But
it's so much more reactive, I think, like a lot of the time. Like I have a genuine creative desire to be working in screenwriting as well as playwriting for multiple actors on stage, as well as writing something for my own voice. Like I really get a kick out of each of those things in their own way. What I'm doing day on day, it's much more about trying to pay bills. It's much more about trying to get that balance. It's much more boring than that. The only time it's ever really like, no, this is what I creatively need, is probably if I'm going to go back to me with a microphone in a studio theatre in front, because that's the kind of thing that I can instigate myself. Like, whereas everything else is like, there's just so many other people and like factors like around all that going, maybe you should meet this person, and maybe you should, and it's not, the relationship inside all of that kind of industry stuff is not as, like, I don't feel like I have as much autonomy as being able to just be like, I'm going to do this now, and I'm going to do this now, and I'm going to do that now, because there's just so many other like things going on.
No, completely.
Not a particularly inspiring, interesting answer, but it is like part of the reality of trying to do it all. Do you know
of course,
what I mean?
but also as well, it's like do you agree with this? You try and once something begins, you commit to it. Then you almost have to find what that is. So it's like there's a weird dance where you kind of switching out the parameters in terms of people's expectations now, I guess, and what I've already done, and then I've got to try and hope that I find something that's close to that same thing as me in a room with a mic. Do you find yourself, I don't know, changing or like leaning towards certain forms, or is it about is there a sense of balance? Like if I do this, I need to go over here and do one of these after this, or is it?
I still just write what I want to write, and even most of the TV projects I'm sort of working or trying to get off the ground, they're just adaptations of things that I've written before. Like I'm trying to turn Black T-shirt into a television series. I want The Half God of Rainfall to become a radio play and a feature film. So for me, it's just other.
That's different, isn't it? That's a different thing. That's like. What could this be that I'm happy with? What could that be?
But the thing is, even then, it just goes back to, for me, it's still the same thing. I started off reading comic books when I was a kid, and Black T-shirt Collection is a story that I told in theater, but the most exciting, the most like, the bits of the most heightened friction are illustrated, which I drew and were just projected onto the black stage. So when it comes to adapting it for screen, I'm just doing that for the whole story. Still the same thing I'm doing. It's just a different medium, and that's how I see all of them. I just get to illustrate or to expand on something else.
Let me ask you something then, with that in mind. Are you then working towards the form that you really wanted them to be in? And these are stepping stones, or is it something else? Do you know what I mean? Is the part of the excitement that they get to be exactly what they're supposed to be now?
For me, it's like there are various stages of the Incredible Hulk.
Right.
Most of the time, when I'm writing, or the thing in its initial incarnation is just Bruce Banner in the lab.
Right.
When it meets an audience, or then that's the sort of halfway Incredible Hulk. When
Green
Bruce,
eyes.
The green eyes, he's sort of aware of Banner, but he's not yet the full Hulk. And then when he reaches his nth degree, that's like World Breaker Hulk. Where he's kicked out of Earth because he might break the planet in two. So for me, it's all a sliding scale.
Okay. So does that mean that then?
I like the Hulk analogy.
You know what I mean? Right. By that, okay, we're going to go off on one. I'm looking at the time. It's only 25 packs. Is everyone all right? Sweet. All right, look. My next heading, look at my professional. It's really the neatest spread diagram we've ever seen, right? The next topic that I had after beginnings was place, right? And I get, I'm going to stop myself talking because I get really excited. But I mean, the thing that I wrote down as a question to start, to try and get us started, was play. Is place a lovely shorthand to emotion, or is it more considered in terms of your work?
In terms of where the stories take place?
In terms of where the stories take place and what they represent. You know, the places, I'm aware of your work, right? And it's full and it's steeped and it's soaked in places that we know and that we care about, right? And I'm the same. But it's like, and I'm just not like a provocation, but more like kind of like, right, I'm thinking about it, and I know if I run towards home, it's going to matter more to me. It's going to feel richer. So that's a lovely shorthand. But I'm trying to think about whether I'm actually thinking more now about place as character or places. Do you know what I mean? Am I evolving it to try and feel like it's more of a reason than just that that's what I know well? Am I using it for something else? Do you consider place beyond just it being something that you know? Do you know what I mean? It's a big question, isn't it?
I'll take a stab at it. I think that, like, for me, I write in quite a Scottish voice a lot of the time, and I write in a voice that is the voice that I grew up around, and the voice that is like sort of in my bones, right? And that's an instinctive, impulsive thing. That's not considered to, like, because I've got some kind of like chip on my shoulder, or like it's not like it's not an agenda, but nevertheless I'm aware of the politics of it. This one right here was co-written with my friend Gary McNair, and lots of Scottish people in the audience just commented on the fact that they'd never heard that voice at the Edinburgh Fringe. And it's like, I grew up in Edinburgh. It's like, that's ridiculous, man. And that is absolutely obscene. So I guess there's a bit of that running through it. But that said, this is set in a fictional town that is like that is a stand-in. So place exists in it, not in a real detailed factual sense, but it exists in the voice of the characters, like, and it exists in their experience, and it's very, very rooted in place in that sense, but that is in character, that is in voice, it's in how they speak to each other. What I find is that level of like specificity around place as it lives in character isn't actually alienating to audiences not from that place. In fact, it actually opens up something. It opens up something of the authentic experience of those characters that other people connect to because they project their own authentic relationship with their own place into it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. So with that in mind then, would you say that you're conscious of that during the writing now, reaching a point now where you've written a bunch of things? Are you aware of that in the sense of like, that's something I'm really proud of and I like and I want to hold that and infuse that into things? Am I trying to get away from that? Maybe am I excited by going further away from home? What is the kind of things that I guess? How do you feel about that kind of question? I mean, like, go on.
For me, I think place is an enigma and always has been since I left Nigeria when I was 12 years old. And I think my entire creative process and all the characters I write, and I just realized they're all searching for a place they belong. My very first play, The 14th Tale, was about me growing up and living in England, then living in Ireland and coming back. So it's about this kid who is trying to find a place. The second play, Untitled, was about a city that is destroyed, and in it there are three characters who literally chasing themselves across the urban environment trying to destroy it. So all of them are urban immigrants. Black Tissue Collection is about two brothers. Again, they're traveling across countries. The Half God of Rainfall is about this kid who lives in Nigeria, goes to America, comes to England, goes to the furthest reaches of the entire solar system.
Are you just realizing this now?
I'm just realizing it now, yeah. And my next play,
You're welcome.
Black T-shirt Barbershop Chronicles, is set in 6 different places at the same time. Then Three Sisters, which I'm currently working on. There are 3 women who are stuck in this house, but it's about Nigeria splintering, where they're actively trying to lose themselves from their place. So it's also,
So hold on, let's get to a question then, because, dude, this is lovely. God. This is lovely to realize, but like with that in mind, right? So if you just realizing that now, you're not conscious of trying to say that, right? But here's.
I thought I was changing with Three Sisters, but it's the same thing.
Of course. Yeah, but look, why are you? Is that a bad thing to you?
It means I can never escape myself. I think that's a bad thing.
Who can escape themselves? Can you escape yourself, Kieran?
No.
Bam! No, he said no.
I'm nothing to aspire to.
I think I try to, because, I don't know, so much of the world is gripped by problems about immigration. And I guess I am an immigrant, but I just thought, I'd somehow closed that door.
Well, surely though,
the door is eternally open.
But that's not saying you're saying the same thing. That's the saying at the heart of it is something that matters, which will forever matter. So as things evolve, sure, that's a good thing to hold on to, though, right? A thing that you can put a flag in and go, right, I know that this matters to me.
I don't know. It depends on. So when Theresa May released that statement saying, if you're a citizen of the world, you're a citizen of nowhere, all the immigrants were like I was going to lift the middle finger.
Sorry,
all of them were angry. Yeah, and it means that, you know, the way in which, I mean, fortunately she's not prime minister anymore, but she alienated people like me, and I don't think we want to accept that alienation for the rest of our lives. So the idea of thinking at some point you get over it, it's something to reach towards, like fine, you slay those immigrant demons. So I guess I was trying to do that.
But that's
to a certain
something else, though,
extent.
surely. That's not you trying to, this is not you on a quest to do something in relation to what somebody else has said or done.
Yeah.
This is something that there is an energy and a fuel that comes from these things, that which communicate stories that maybe more people can have conversations about it.
But at some point, I don't know, I guess you'd want the fuels that fire you to be purer and to be clearer, to not come from so much childhood baggage. And maybe that's a luxury.
It's interesting, right? We're similar ages, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there are points and there are tipping points, or there are not. Do you think you can actively do that? It's interesting. Like I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Can you get away from that? Can you? We write for other people to speak. We write characters that aren't. Yeah. We came from speaking our own voices, and then we kind of gave words to other people. So we're aware of what that is, but we're in things. Do you think you ever can really like do that and it'd be good?
Well, I think it sort of maybe depends who else is, because writing, even when it is a singularly authored thing, as I alluded to earlier, it is also quite a collaborative act a lot of the time for me. So I'm thinking in terms of recent stuff, I wrote a little play for some students at the Royal Conservatoire in Glasgow, and there was like 10 of them. And it was about a free speech scandal in a university, and a lot of the students were North American, so we just decided it was in a North American university. It's because I worked quite closely with the performers and the director in the development of that piece. It was infused with something. So I wrote this like 10-strong ensemble of like predominantly like North American like university students. Do you know what I mean? That's not where I'm from. That's not but it was something to do with like that was enabled through
that's a collaborative
process.
Yeah, completely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. That's become more and more exciting to me, in a sense of it's almost like it's part facilitation but part authorship, but it kind of feels like it's shared. Maybe communal's too far a thing, but ensemble maybe makes a sense in terms of we've got these roles and this feels like it's embedded in real, tangible, but also we have the license to possibly explore other stories.
Yeah, it was just like getting them to play a bunch of like Scottish kids like I would normally have written or whatever would have been, well that would have been as much of a leap as me writing these like Americans. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, so it just felt like a natural thing to do. It was still written by me, but it was informed by the presence of other folks somehow. I don't know.
No, that makes sense.
So I think it is possible to like break that and be like, okay, I normally do something that fits into this world.
But it has to be conscious.
I'm going to go that. Maybe, I don't know. Does it? I don't know. I'm wary of have tos, but I guess maybe it was then. Yeah. Don't know.
I want to cheer you up.
You want to cheer me up?
Right, so I'm just going to say the word. I'm going to say the word music.
Yay!
Right? And I'm going to quote Truman Capote for some reason, and he said at one point, he said, "To me, the greatest pleasure of writing is not what it's about, but the music the words make." Right? And there is that kind of Walter Pater thing as well, the thing of like all art aspiring to the level and quality of music, right? And I know music matters to us. I know music has been directly in and inspiring and mentioned and referenced and stuff. But so I guess I want to talk about it literally in a bit, and then maybe a bit more conceptually. But like, how much do you view writing, your craft of writing, as musical? How much does that land with you as something you agree with, or feels uncomfortable, or feels right? How right does that feel to say that as I'm crafting things, I'm conscious and bothered about the musicality?
For me, it's viscerally important, because sometimes I'm writing about really difficult things, and I feel as if the only way I can honor my audience is to make the process of digesting these things as easy as possible.
Okay.
Because they have to leave the theater and go back into the world with the baggage I've given them. And sometimes making sure the text sounds beautiful is a way for them digesting it without the roadblocks, without how hard or difficult it can be. So I try to
So it's consciously almost like the gift of it.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'm going, right, here is something in a form which not soothes, but kind of like counterbalances.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I've always done that.
Wow. So that's like that, but that means that they're in your head from from when you started.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, if I didn't want to share work, I wouldn't like write it down. I just enjoy it in my head.
Yeah.
So when I'm writing, I'm hoping that I share it with people. Therefore, they are in my head. They are around me, around my table.
But in so much as the generosity of that, or the consideration of that is interesting. I'm interested in what do you think about that? Well, that idea of, you know, there'll be people who would hear that and possibly go, okay, well, it should be you, and then whatever they get. But like that's completely valid. What you just said there.
I think there's a certain arrogance for people who think like that, because in other parts of the world, I'll give an example. In lots of Latinx communities, Latinx countries, the poets are also politicians, and you can't divorce one from the other. When they write a poem and publish it, and they're walking on the high street, they fully expect it to be stopped and critiqued. Like, say, that poem doesn't represent me or my family, go home and write better. You know, so
it's almost like the parameters that have been set somewhere like here make it seem like more of a thing when really that's interesting.
I think we have a quite romanticised and unhealthy ideal of like the genius writer, artist, author in this country, and I just don't think that's how writing comes into being necessarily. Although the idea of like walking down the street and someone being like, "Your play didn't represent me or my family," I'd be like, "Whoa, I'm sorry."
I'll do another one
right now.
It's like, careful what you wish for, because I don't know if I want that in my life.
Well, can I ask you the music question in the sense of, because obviously there's the mechanics of music and when to cut and whenever that is clearly more obvious maybe, but I mean, like, how much is, you know, if you were describing or when you describe it to yourself, like, does that make sense? Does that feel like pretentious?
Particularly, I'm loving this chat because it's reminding me of stuff that I might have forgotten, like particularly, like I'm stuck with a few things I'm writing just now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and do this thing that I'm about to describe, which was in terms of writing some early stuff. It's kind of like, it was almost a kind of dramaturgy by music in some ways. Like my very first solo show was a show called Hitch. It was a story of a journey I made hitchhiking across Europe to get to an anti-capitalist protest.
I saw that one.
Yeah, you did. Because we were doing Forest Fringe the same year, a good while back now, and I knew what the arc of the story was because it had been my own experience, but I didn't quite know how to tell all of it. I knew that I was going to work with my mates Gav and Ben, who had a band at the time called Over the Wall. I didn't have any money to pay them, so they didn't have time to write any new music, so they just agreed that like they could cobble together a soundtrack based on their existing tunes. So like, if I was stuck, I was listening to a lot of their music, and I'm like, I don't know what needs to happen, but I know that a bit needs to feel like their tune, A History of British Welfarism. It needs to feel like that tune. So I'd had that tune on, it needs to feel like that. And so, and the similar thing, I wrote another one that was one that I performed called Beats. It's a story about a kid that goes to a rave in the 90s and gets beat up by a cop, essentially. That's sort of all that happens. And before a word was written, because I had this idea that I wanted to do a rave story, I got into a room in the venue that doesn't exist anymore, sadly, in Glasgow, called The Arches, with my mate Johnny Whoop, who's a DJ at The Arches, and we were just listening to records and chatting, I knew roughly what I wanted to do, but there was not that much down. And so it was another thing of being like, like Dominator by Human Resource. Like, wherever the story goes, it's got to hit that point. It's got to do whatever. It's got to earn the right to be soundtracked by Dominator by Human Resource. And so it's like that's like...
Well, it's like you've got to earn the right to I've got to live that to the point where if I'm going to tell this story, I've got to know that I'm in that to the degree that I fully believe it.
So, exactly. And so it wasn't a case of like the story's all crafted, now how do we soundtrack it? It was much more of a two-way conversation with music in both instances.
Completely.
And it was and my relationship on an emotional level with the music that I was listening to informed the shape of the story, if that makes sense.
Completely does.
So it was a big thing for me, particularly with early stuff. Music.
Awesome. And has that changed then, do you think?
I think it changes a little bit because like both of those are like, well, Gav and Ben are going to be on stage with me, so that's like an obvious place to go to. Or like Johnny's going to be on stage, like, so it's part of it, so that's there. When you're writing like a series outline for a TV thing, it's like it's not. That's why I'm saying it. It's easy to forget. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's not. Whereas now I'm like, oh yeah, I'm stuck with that. But what if I just like?
Well, the irony being, the irony being that those things that you're trying to do, what matters and what will make them sing is that very quality.
Totally. Exactly. Yeah.
But we've all done it. We all get in a situation where you're kind of like, right, what am I kind of? Who is this? Oh no, definitely mine. And you're so used to speaking about it. It's kind of why these things existed, because I was saying that when you're in these situations and you talk about the finished thing so often, you forget, man. It sounds crazy, but you forget because we don't really stop.
Yeah.
Like whether it's the consciousness of paying bills or thinking that this opportunity is too good to turn down. You don't get a chance to ever go like, right, hold on, what do I need? Do you know what I mean? Can I ask you a really silly question?
Go on, please.
Right, if your writing was a band.
Yeah. Oh no.
No, you don't have to be a real. Like, what would the band play? Right, here's what I've got. One I'm doing because I've had time to think about this. Right, so what mine is right. If you took Neil Young, or it's what I hope it would be. Right, if you took Neil Young, right, and half of the Wu-Tang Clan, right, and then just put them in that thing from The Fly, where they just came out the other end like. That's what I'm after.
That's great.
Makes no sense whatsoever. It's just fun to kind of just not make it. Do you know what I mean? Does any particular track or any particular band or artist pop into head?
Well, I want to say something like, Minor Threat remixed by The Prodigy, but in reality it's probably Belle and Sebastian. Do you know what I mean?
Mixed with Prodigy, do you know what I mean? Like, it's all of them, right? You're screaming with your face.
Mine's mad.
Come on. You used to talk about like direct actual songs. You're the hip hop.
Yeah.
The rap party is purely about response to.
That's what I'm saying. That's why it's a problem.
You feel a bit limited.
Yeah. Okay. So it would have to be something like Burna Boy mixed with like Arrested Development. And okay, don't hit me.
I'm not gonna hit you, lad.
With maybe some like Kenny G thrown in.
Kenny G.
That is awesome.
Because
why? Sorry, say why.
Because there's a time and place for sleazy sax.
Right.
Right.
So here's what we're gonna do. Everyone needs to leave later and make a playlist which is basically Arrested Development, Burna Boy, and Kenny G, and then not look when you click shuffle.
Yeah.
And just like
yeah.
That'll be like chilling with Inua. Right. Next. Okay, we're all right. Is everyone all right still? Right. I'm hot. It's fine. Community, right? How solitary, which is interesting because you've already talked about it being kind of more collaborative.
Yeah, sometimes.
So it's like I think. Let me go somewhere else with it because I've been asking people the same question. Let me ask something here. Where does this come from, right? Family-wise, right? When you go home, right? Whenever home is for whatever occasion requires a meal. And everyone's there, and cousins are there, and all this stuff. And people they're looking at you like, you're not famous, but you do stuff that's like a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Right? We all know. I know we all know this kind of feeling, right? What do you do? What do they make of it? What do family make of this? And does it make sense to them? And can you trace a line back to where it might have come from, like literally, or is it more cloudy? Do you know what I mean? My mom now knows what I do for sure, but only because the book happened.
Yeah.
Up until that point, it was like, he's not asking me for money. He seems happy. All's
Whatever.
good. Right? Yeah. And that's not selling us short. Right? That was like that was fine with me as well. Because for a long time it wasn't that way at all. But like it was a tangible thing that meant that the looks as you got potatoes went away. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Does that make sense to you? Am I just projecting my own stuff onto you now?
No,
like what?
I think I have the same name as my father. So my dad, it was for when he like just let it go, and then was when he went to the post office and was signing something, and it wrote his name down, and the cashier was like, "You're not Inua Ellams," and I was like, "Yes, I am," and he said, "No, you're not. Like I know what Inua looks like," and he said, "Oh, he's my son," and then it changed. So for him, that's when.
So it was validation from outside.
For him, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's when things began to settle and change, where my father could then felt like he could tell people, because he thought if Joe Bloggs from Royal Post Office could understand, then maybe other people will, and then I can tell them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and in your experience of that, is that even a thing that does that happen? Is there a kind of like dance to it that you experience with your own family?
So no, my folks have always been super like encouraging about what I do. So that's...
I guess like literally, did it... were there examples and stuff that they did that you kind of?
Well, I've got a big brother, right,
yeah.
who's also a storyteller, who's also
How
like
much older? Can I ask?
6 years older than me.
So
And
enough
so,
to be like
yeah,
the coolest person.
yeah. So I really think a lot, if there's a direct point of family influence around all of this in terms of me going, oh, that's like possible or allowed,
Yeah.
then it's like it's on the same generation. It doesn't really
Yeah.
come from above that.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I don't have like, it's not like my dad's a writer or anything. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, no, they're pretty cool at treating it like a normal job, even though it's massively not one. But yeah, no, there is that thing, like maybe with more distant relatives or like family connections and stuff, of it being like exactly what you described. Like you do a thing, right? I don't know what it is, but it's something, and we're all very proud.
Yeah, well done.
Well,
Keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Yeah,
Keep doing your thing.
And the published plays are helpful for that. You don't get anything from publishing a play other than seeing it in a place like this, which is lovely. But like, it like can demonstrate to like a distant elderly family member that like this is a real thing,
Completely.
because you can hold it in your hand. Do you know?
I've got one cousin who, whenever I go and stay with him on his floor, right, there's a bunch of shelves. It's just DVDs, like lots of like every possible gangster film you've ever seen, and then just one of my books at the bottom. And so when people come around, I know he gets out, it's one book. So he's all right. He doesn't care about it. He's never read it, right? But he just like points at it, and it's like a thing. And that makes me feel awesome all the time,
nice,
because it's
man.
like, it's just about a pride, right? It's not about connection. Connection is via like, we've done that almost kind of together. Okay, let me ask you something else related to community. This that's happening now in front of an audience and streaming and stuff. Why doesn't this happen more? Like naturally, like away, right? Do you think that there is a lack of this, or do you have these kind of dialogues which aren't about making something directly, but about just people bouncing and just sharing a thing? Why do you think?
I definitely don't have as much of it as I should, as much as I want. But it's just because London is hostile. It's a hostile environment for pretty much everything to a certain extent, And I just everyone who I know who are doing this, who I could sit down and talk with, they're just always doing a million things. And I understand it because sometimes I'm doing a million things as well.
Yeah.
I think that's the only reason why. But
do you feel yourself wanting it more?
Yeah. You know, now and then, it's like 3 a.m. and there's a friend of mine who calls me up because she has insomnia and I have insomnia, and we natter and, you know, complain to each other and then console each other for like half an hour, then go back to sleep. And it happens like 3 a.m. and we wake up at 7 o'clock and we're wondering if that happens. And you have to check, oh yeah, that actually did happen. Was it just my, So those are the times when I'm able to find it. But most of the time it's just a little bit like go. My nieces need me, my nephews need me, my parents want me to do this, and you're just running from one place to another.
How about you?
Yeah, I don't have these kind of chats anywhere near as much as I would like. We were saying earlier that like there's something about the different kind of energy in your life, like maybe 10 years ago or whatever, where like it'd be more like the relationship with the work is slightly less individualized and professionalized, and so there's much more of like just being around it like a friend's like flat, like an artsy, divey flat where everyone's reading their own like stuff to each other, and like it might be crap stuff or some of it might be brilliant, but it's like the act of sharing it is like a community thing.
Do you think
like,
it's inevitable then, this the kind of transition, or are we just chickens?
Yeah, it's got to happen more. In fact, like,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, I think
okay, this is my question. Do you think we have become the establishment we railed against when we were younger?
I don't know, man.
Dude, there's nobody anywhere considering me to be establishment.
Are you sure?
Dude,
it's funny thing. I'm pretty sure last week someone called me emergent still. Do you know what I mean? It's like now I'm getting establishment.
What do you mean?
Like,
do you mean like surely establishment means the people who decide who gets to do
stuff? No. So
what does establishment mean?
Just people who are in positions of power, we're the ones who don't know whether they even recognize it or not.
So do you mean I think what you mean, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. What you mean is somebody earning a living from it.
Yeah.
That has become a position of power because other people want that.
Yeah, and then because there were positions that we couldn't imagine ourselves being in 10 years ago, and suddenly we're that. And because of that, we don't have enough time to have as much freedom as we
I think that's maybe it, and I think that's like. like the closest thing I would have to something like this recently in relation to like my work and talking about what the work is doing or whatever would be if, and I've not done it for ages actually, but sometimes if I've been really stuck with a play, there's like a few friends that I could like call on to like arrange a time, be like, I'll just put on a big pot of soup and we're all just going to read it aloud, right? And then it's actually like a really, like it's nice for me because everyone's working for free for me, right? So maybe it's horrible for everyone else and I owe them all a favour, I don't know. Right?
It's good soup, you're fine.
But like, yeah, exactly, it's soup, yeah. But that kind of thing is
How
like...
often does that happen, can I ask?
I've not done that for definitely at least a year now, although I did go round to a mate's house and read his play with him just 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So, but that was rare.
Like, there must be people who like would be involved in this chat and go, what are we talking about? I'm trying to make it da-da-da. But the fact that we're kind of saying that, craving it, I get really annoyed with myself. Because like I said before, the reason this is albeit with an audience, and like this is existing because Dan and I had a chat that it doesn't happen, and that I loved our conversations, and yet we could make it happen more, right?
Yeah.
So are we talking about? Maybe we're overanalyzing it. I don't know.
There's a thing about distance as well, though. It's like I've got my immediate community in Glasgow and stuff, but if the three of us were to sit down and have this chat, then that necessitates some kind of travel budget. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no,
so
it's true.
You know, that's tricky too. Like.
Now I feel like we're on the verge of just need Guinness and we could all, this feel like for the three old men. Remember how it used to be. Right, next topic, we're doing good. Right, sweet. Next topic is time. Right, how long does it take to do a thing from the shower to the stage to the thing? How long does it take? Does it vary? Obviously it varies, but I mean like, because have you done this at any point? Just stopped and gone, bloody hell, look how much has happened. Do you ever do that? I did it for the first time.
It's taken for a project.
No, in terms of how much we've done?
No, I never do that. Lots of friends tell me that I should, but
it's really hard to do. Yeah. But I mean, like, if you look at it, it almost doesn't make sense in a way, and it feels like I'm trying to be like I'm blowing. But like, there's loads of stuff that we've done and been involved with, and we talk about it being a long time, but it's not that long. Right. So like, it can't take that long. But then why does it feel like I don't know, man?
No, like, so. The first time I had the idea to write Barbershop Chronicles was in 2009.
Yeah.
When the play opened was in 2017.
Okay.
So mine, like...
So it's many balls, isn't it? It's juggling and it's... Okay.
Yeah.
So I've oversimplified it basically in the sense that it's not... It's in bits and you...
It's in bits and it can take a long time.
It depends on what it is as well. Like this one here is like the most recent thing I've done that is like me with a microphone on a stage, just me doing a thing. And that was 2016 that happened. So I've not done that kind of thing for a little while now.
Yeah.
But that was a show called Heads Up, and that was written in like, you know, on and off in little bits. That was written in 6 months. Like, and I was working on other things at the time as well. It was really written in an intensive period of 2 months.
Yeah.
And it was written like that because a whole bunch of my stuff was tied up in development processes that were taking a long time. Yeah. And I had this like desire to be like, I'm just going to make a show the way I would have made a show 5 years ago, and I'm just going to do it. And so I set aside those conditions to be like, bang, I'm going to write like that. Yeah. And so that one took weeks, right, to write, like literally weeks. Whereas the most recent play I had on was a play called Mouthpiece. Mouthpiece was in development, massively changing the form of what it was in dialogue with a literary department, like for years. Like, so I wouldn't have been able to write that one in a flash. It's doing something that is like, that it took me a long time and a lot of conversations with other people to like figure out the mechanics of how to do the thing that I set out to do like 5 years prior. Do you know? Like,
completely. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Right. Things just change, they morph, and so sometimes they need.
Okay, so who's teaching us or telling us which ones are which, and how have you ever been embarked on a process where it's something is like kind of like taking longer, and then you've kind of realised that it's completely the wrong energy for it, or does it just sort itself out? Or can you force a thing into... Have you ever tried to force a thing into a short period of time and it's completely disintegrated?
Yeah, I've had a process of like trying to do something too fast and it not quite coming off.
And was that a thing for you? Was that a thing for other people? Was it like...
It was a thing that had been locked in a kind of like lengthy process of a few rejections and a long like drawn out thing, and then it was a decision just to like get it up quickly and to like put it in front of an audience quickly. That was like a little bit half inspired by like doing it with that, be like, no, like, we can do it. Like a little bit of a middle finger energy to people that weren't putting the play on. It was probably a little bit of a mistake to do that one like that because it required a bit more time and love and care. Like, so yeah, that wasn't anyone else forcing me to do anything. That was, but it was a response to a set of frustrating conditions.
Okay. Similarly, have you had anything like that at all?
Yeah, there was something that started out as a joke after playing basketball with my friends in a Vietnamese restaurant in Hoxton. And then it became a running joke in our WhatsApp group. Then it became a short film that I pitched to the BBC, which they made, and then they commissioned it into a series, which I've rewritten 5 or 6 times. And each time they say no, then they move it on, and someone else say yes, and then they say no after a while. So it's just kept on going around and around.
Based on like, the fact that it's straying from the original idea, or basically?
No, I've each time they've tried to push me away from the idea, I convinced them why my idea was better, which is so Nigerian a thing to do. But it's worked out.
Is it just like a stern voice?
Stern voice, and I give them food. Like anyway, and yeah. So it's just a case of them and like the things they're producing, and they think will fall in line with things, and then one exec leaves, therefore everything has to change beneath them and goes to another competition. It's just been shifting around like that. But and that's so sometimes they're forced to form to change a little bit, and I have to sort of meet them halfway. Then as soon as that exec leaves, then I just go back to what I want again. So that's
do you do that sometimes? That like slightly political game with notes that you don't like, of being like no.
You sort of have to, because they're still trying to figure it out as much as you do, and they're trying to second guess audiences, and they understand to a certain extent, but they're not infallible. They're not, you know, they can get things wrong, and you just have to convince them. Yeah.
Okay, with that, I was going to ask a question about deadlines. Who cares about deadlines? Do you care about deadlines? Nah, right, forget it.
Yeah.
Mistakes.
Much more interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
right.
much more interesting.
Mistakes, right. I could start with a few obvious questions, but I'm going to ask you this one. Do you think, I guess creatively, but maybe professionally as well, but maybe mostly creatively, do you think you make less these days, in a sense that, do you feel that there has been a refinement in how you get to the heart of something, or do you know what I mean? Or do you feel that you're stumbling as much or less as always? Does it depend on the form?
I don't think I've ever made mistakes. And by that I mean mistakes are just stepping stones towards the final product.
So in terms of even definition, your brain wouldn't even like term it that way?
No, it's just, like if I write a terrible poem, and I agree that it is, I don't think of it as a mistake. I just break it into small parts, strip it for spare parts, recycle it into other poems or into things. So for me, they're not mistakes.
So would you not even use the word mistake?
No, because it's part of the process. I think of Mos Def's third album, which is terrible, but I know it gave rise to like Sex, Love and Money, you know, and work he's created ever since. And so I think like he needed to make that in order to make the things after, and that is part of his creative process. And I think he agrees because he just owns that album.
So is it like, but that's just a matter of perspective, right? That's be able to go from there to kind of go there and go, oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
I quite like the word. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if it's just phonetically, I don't know.
Mistakes.
Mistake, I don't know what that is. But it's like, it's almost like, because all this didn't happen by accident, but still feels like I kind of stumbled, and I still am stumbling. It almost, maybe it's like a defensive thing on my part. It gives me license to feel like I'm getting things wrong, and that's part of it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit just my own defensive issue or whatever. But if I say the word mistakes to you, does that feel like something that you are avoiding, that you're embracing, that you make less of? What do you reckon?
I think that like I definitely make mistakes in decision making around like professionally or just around my life or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But I probably agree with Inua around like it's not the word that I would use to describe like wrong turns or like bad drafts in a writing process, because they are always like it just means it's not finished yet. Like it's not done yet. Like I've not got there yet. And I don't think I'm doing that less now, actually. I actually weirdly think there was a kind of, I'm probably romanticising this, to be honest, but there was a kind of quite liberating naivety to how I would write 10 years ago that like just allowed a kind of direct access to a particular kind of storytelling. I was like, there it is. Now actually, as I'm navigating different forms that I actually, or different mediums that I actually don't fully always confidently know my way around, I'm doing that thing of like stumbling and finding and rewriting and going back, like probably more than ever before, actually, not less.
But gladly as well.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to just be able to knock them out, like, do you know what I mean? Like, so I guess gladly and glad to be where I am, having the opportunity to do that, but still find the process of being like, oh no, I need to go back to that and change that, I need to go that, this isn't right yet. Still, I don't feel glad of that experience in the moment, I find it frustrating. Like, I think you get quite a lot of writers you get some writers that talk about how they love writing. Like, I don't always love writing. Like, I love having written, like, do you know what I mean? Like, but that thing of being, like, that thing of being locked in something and having to go back and change it and then not knowing where it is yet and feeling in the woods a little bit. I don't feel glad of that. Like, and I'm spending quite a lot of time in that place these days. But it's just where you got to be, and you have to like be able to live with it and be like strong-headed about it, I think. Do you know?
Yeah, fully. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Especially in theatre these days where there are like 19 people in the room and they're looking at you like the head honcho and ask you a question like, why does my character say this? And you're like, why does your character say this? You know. So having to figure it out, it's really difficult. And when you're asked your prime reasons for things, you lose yourself because sometimes you're trying to be the 19 characters in the play and to think through all of them, and you get lost in that process. And they're all at the root of it, versions of yourself. So in the rehearsal room, when they ask you, what do you think? They're asking like, which part of you wrote this? And that was like maybe 2.5 years ago. And you have to scrabble for that. So that is intensely exposing and frightening sometimes,
But underneath that, you're saying that there is this, maybe faith is the wrong word, but like acceptance that this is part of it.
Yeah.
So ultimately, like you're saying, it will show itself in whatever way it shows itself.
Yeah. And it's definitely part of it because the scripts get stronger, then the play gets stronger, then everyone gets stronger. And theatre is an absolute collaborative process where you have to understand what they bring into the play. Okay,
so with that in mind, is this a fair statement to make? We have less doubt than we did 10 years ago?
I think we find ways of minimizing doubt more. I don't think we have necessarily
There's more, the same amount is there, you just put it in different drawers?
No, you have people who you work with and either confirm or raise the questions earlier before you get to the process where it's just exposed. So you're confident to a certain extent,
Okay.
And before the audience comes into the theatre, part of the rehearsals is confirming those things. So you're not doubtful as such. You're just wondering if they will meet you halfway.
Okay, nice. Right. Seamlessly, because this is my third time doing this, it's time for questions, right? I've got loads more I could ask them. We've got this. I don't know if you've seen this before, but this is this thing that we can throw around and you can ask a question into the microphone. If you don't want to throw it, you don't have to throw it. But does anybody have a question? In fact, is everyone all right? Are you at home? Hello? Right? Libraries, sorry. Streamers. That's not a thing, right? Does anybody want to ask a question to these guys at all about anything that's kind of come up, about work in general, about writing? I mean, I can see people with pens taking notes and stuff. This is really exciting and daunting at the same time. Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask? Can I throw this at you? Is that all right? Sorry. You got it. It's the black bit on the top.
All right. I just...
Yeah, I reckon.
Okay. How do you distinguish a good idea from a bad idea? Yeah. At what point do you know?
Who wants to?
You go.
I don't know. I think sometimes I don't think I've ever started writing something and then got some way along with it and then gone, this whole thing was a bad idea. I think that the idea, when it's not working, then has to evolve and become something else. Similarly, I don't think there's like a point where I've gone, here are all my ideas, now I'm going to look at them and see which ones are bad and which ones are good. If I'm pitching it to someone, or if I'm sitting down to write it, it's because on some subconscious level, even before that, I've decided this is a good idea because I want to write this. I spoke a little bit about a play that was in development for a long time. It was a play called Mouthpiece. I did get to a point actually with that one where the central idea is still the same central idea that is in the play that now exists as a play. So the idea, whatever the smallest version of what the idea is, wasn't a bad idea. I'm happy with that. My idea of how to tell that story or how to manifest those themes in a theatre context was a bad idea. I wrote a whole draft of the play that was the wrong play. And I only realised that because I wrote that draft, which is why I would never have called it a mistake, because I only realised it because I wrote that draft. And I wrote that draft and I was like, it's not only does this not work, this is never going to work. Yeah. Like, so it's wrong. So it was, I guess, I'd never framed it like that, but I guess the form of it, was a bad idea. And I only realised at the end of writing a whole play. So I put that whole play in the bin.
Yeah, so it's not, at the end, is the straight, I guess.
Yeah,
See,
at the end, yeah.
I don't know about you, I mean, like, there's something about, like, whether this is true or this is just like a romantic thing in my head, I feel like I'm more in my belly than I am in my head. So it's like, this feels that my stomach is always kind of leading. And just like hunger, right, if something feels wrong, I can't even get to the end of it. It's hard finishing stuff, right? Whether it's like a page or for 19 people to play. So I just have to kind of trust the belly. But also alongside that is that sense of, like what Inua was saying earlier, is that sense of like, right, I have a faith that even for something to show itself, I have the arrogance or the belief in myself that there's something in it. So like at some point, something is going to show itself, or some part of it is going to give itself value. So it becomes good, quote unquote, you know? And then I think, I don't know, maybe there's a cut-off point, I'm not sure. But I kind of, I have people that I trust, a small circle of people that I trust, that I share things with, and not in the sense of, they say this is good, so I carry on, but just how it feels communicating to them, whether I get excited by that and it breathes life into it. That, to me, feels like an idea that maybe isn't good, but is worth pursuing to a point where it might show itself as being good. Does that make sense? Don't get me wrong, there's so many bad ones. So many bad ones. But I'm not ever going to talk about those. Do you want to say something, Lynn?
No. You guys covered it.
Is that something, wasn't it? Does anyone else want to ask? Wicked, can you chuck it and enjoy chucking it? Yay!
Yay! I just wanted to ask, like, at what point do you stop editing and think this is like the final version of the thing that I'm going to show people?
I think I only really stop editing when the deadline is there and I have to submit it. Yeah. For poems, there's a saying that poems aren't finished, they're abandoned. And I think that's it. I could sit there just pushing a space or comma, a punctuation just forever. I'm saying things, same thing with screenplays, especially when you're writing things where there's lots of rhythm in the text. You could just keep poking at it forever. So yeah, I think when the deadline comes and I need to hand it over to the actors, when they're like, we've run out of time, that's the only time when I really stop.
But even then, right, as well, like you're saying, we were saying here when we were talking, even in that process, there are tweaks and stuff. Yeah. When if something's going to be on its feet, the process of being on its feet demands kind of tweaks and stuff. Yeah. So it's almost like you need somebody else or somebody's else as a kind of thing. But
even Barbershop Chronicles, which is still on tour, we're still editing the text. We still chopped half of the scene off when it was open. Half of the scene in Uganda, we chopped it up when we opened the Roundhouse. So 2 years after the play opened, we're still editing. Yeah, never stops.
It's almost like you could just call it. It's like when your mate comes over. Do you know what I mean? And your mum, he's like, what time are you staying till? It's all right. And then at some point your mum goes, right, Dan's got to go. Because you're going to bed, you've got to get in the bath, right? It's almost like there's like some sort of other influence, right? That kind of, but even that's not, it's never done, man. It's never done. You print something, I don't know what you're like, I'll go and do a reading from a book.
You edit it as a read.
If you saw my copy of the books, it looks like one of those poems where you've deleted most of the words just to get a couple of things, right? Because we're constantly evolving, and like you found something through the writing of that, which now applies, but as a foundation for what you've become on the back of it. So it's something else, and I guess it's that thing, but it's also a really, really good way of procrastinating. Because what it does, it gives you that license to kind of go, right, no, not yet, I don't have to share it, it's not quite ready. And that's why there are more people with half-finished novels in their desks than there are published. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's not the only reason, obviously, but like there's part of that. And I think if there wasn't a satisfaction in the risk of not knowing and sharing, like Inua was saying before, almost at the beginning, like if I like the idea of sharing this with people, that's in my mind, so I want to do that. So at some point it's a leap. And sometimes you're going to leap and think you're going to go like, what's his name in The Matrix, and try and make it between the two buildings, and you're going to smack on the floor. But then when you leap and then land and you're next to a new person, like, that was all right, wasn't it? That's so much, for me anyway, enough fuel to do it again. And then maybe things get longer and you feel a little bit more confident. But don't get me wrong, you know, I don't know what you guys are like. The moment I press click send on something to a person who isn't my partner, who I trust completely, the outside voice, the editor or whatever, when I click, that's such an amazing rush. And then 30 seconds later, I'm like, what are they going to think? And then I start unpicking it myself and, do you know what I mean? Getting myself ready for the ones I'm going to fight for and the ones that are going to... I talk so much then, sorry. Did you want to say anything about...
The only thing I'd add, because I think he's covered it, was that in theatre and particularly, if you're writing for something that's going to be spoken by other people, like, so not like the dude with the microphone solo show thing, that like the editing happens in that place and writing happens in that place because like actors know things about characters that we don't. So if you're working with like really good actors that are really generous and on it, then like you're going to want to be prepared to make edits and even rewrites in that like first week
of rehearsal. It's
really
exciting, right? When you get that chemistry going, that's genuinely exciting when someone owns it.
Yeah.
Because that feels like what it was supposed to be.
Yeah. And that's part of what you were saying earlier about it being a team sport. Like, so, yeah. But, you know, other than that, I think we covered it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. Do you want to check it at someone else? Does anyone else want to? Yes. Oh, tiny one.
Have you ever written anything but not released it because you don't think the audience is ready for the conversation?
Not ready for the conversation.
Or you don't think they're going to like digest it in the way that you would like them to digest it?
A couple of things. A few poems.
Then how have you dealt with that?
I've just kind of waited until I felt like, one, I was ready to take on the questions that follow up, and yeah, just waited.
Been a case where someone else has like kind of released the same kind of idea after, and you were like waiting.
I mean, that always happens, I think.
That sounds like a film in itself.
Yeah, I think that always happens. Yeah.
So, what, in the sense of what you like, there's a topic or there's a something, a relationship that you've been exploring but held back on, and you've seen it exist somewhere else.
Yeah.
Have that happened to you as well?
Put whole things in the bin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks.
That doesn't sound like
it sucks on some level, but it only sucks if you have found that you've got yourself trapped into the idea of this as some kind of individualistic pursuit in which we're all in competition with each other, right? So if you find that you've let yourself, and there's so much pressure to engage with a work like that because it's how the industry's set up in some ways, right? And so like if you found that you've let yourself start thinking like that, then that happening sucks.
Yeah.
But if we can understand what we're doing as part of some kind of shared project, like where we're peers rather than in competition with each other, then if someone has done something that's a bit like an idea you've had and they've done it really well, then your thing doesn't need to exist anymore.
Yeah.
And that's actually fine.
Completely.
Right? And that should be fine.
Well, it's quite
And
liberating in a sense.
And the challenge is just to remind yourself of that, I think. And that's hard. Like, it's
well,
hard
hard
not
if you're
to
by
feel.
yourself.
Yeah,
If we're
totally.
meeting up on a regular basis, maybe slightly easier.
Yeah, exactly, right? But then also much more easier for you guys to steal my ideas, right?
Oh, I see, right.
Yeah.
It's all of...
But I love the idea that there's like, I would love to be able to say that I've got this potent play in my drawer that's like the world's just not ready for yet. Like I love that, but it's just not the case,
For
unfortunately.
me, never
I'd be
whole
getting it out.
plays or something. Just certain poems where I'm like, yeah, if I do that, my mum would disown me. I can't.
I went through a period of time where I would write for other people, but never give it to them. That makes sense. When it was back in the day when it was like an individual thing, like I'd write with, and part of it was an exercise in me saying things that I maybe wouldn't have said or couldn't have said, but also just, it was part of that sense of just trying to step out of myself, but you couldn't. And so there's a bunch of those. But again, like Inua said, they're smaller things. They're not like, it wasn't necessarily about the kind of conversation. It was more just about a certain voice. And it did actually revolve around the biggest reason why I didn't even share that with the people, some of whom I knew, was purely because of people back home. And it was like a thing of not like I have made this lane and I must stay in it, just that it didn't feel like that conversation was one that I wanted to kind of have.
Engage with this
Isn't that
stuff,
funny though?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good question, man.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have a question? Yo, we're on fire now.
I guess my question is just, where do you get your inspiration? And then if you do find yourself getting writer's block, how do you deal with that?
Yo, a practical one.
Inspiration for me, it starts from everywhere. I don't think I've ever not had something to write about. And because I live and I try to be present in the world, if you throw a pen, you're bound to hit something that you find wrong with it. And you then try and fix it by writing a poem, and that's the answer. So I've always been that way. I've never been stuck for things. In fact, I write other things between writing big things because I'm always churning through things. So yeah, I've never been really been stuck for inspiration. Mine is just finding the time to put all the things in my head down on paper. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Through your work, are you writing wrongs with like writing with a R, not a W?
Yeah.
Is there on your head these things that you're throwing the pen at and looking at going, that's not right?
Yeah.
Is there a part of that is fuel to redress that in any way, or does it feel?
I think it's an attempt to, if not to redress it, at least to address it. And just be like, this is how you make me feel, or this is how you made my sister feel, and I can't fix you, but I'm gonna just put a light on you and share you with other people.
And see who else is feeling them.
Who else feel the same way. That's one attempt too.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because I think sometimes you ask a question about inspiration, and people that try and basically go back to try and think about the origins of things, when really what we're talking about there is a response to something that is constantly going on. So it's not like, okay, it came from here. It's like, look what's there. Look what I'm touching. Look what I dealt with this morning. Look at the look I got last night. That's interesting, because I've not, in terms of that question, my brain went kind of traditionally like, okay, right, let me think.
To your own origin
Do you know
story.
what I mean? And I think it's true, isn't it? Because these things don't stop.
Yeah, they never stop.
I don't know, do you want to add anything there, Kieran?
I don't know, I find it the hardest question to answer because even the kind of process structure thing, it all just feels so random and pulled together, and like you're just kind of in the middle of living it. Do you know what I mean? I guess in a similar way, like I'd maybe answer that a lot of my initial ideas for stuff comes from something witnessed, something I've observed in the world, and feeling like I want to say something about or of that. But then I think that on a much more subconscious level, a lot of my inspiration probably comes from my own really value-shaping experience in the world in terms of the community I grew up in terms of my childhood or whatever. I think I look back on stuff that I've written and notice stuff like that and notice that that's where a lot of the voice comes from or a lot of the character comes from. So in terms of the writer's block thing, yeah, it's tough. I find that really tough right now because I'm tired a lot of the times. I've got really small kids, and I find writing properly writing when really tired, well hard. So if anyone's got tips on writer's block, hit me.
With that in mind, can I ask you though? Sorry, I'm hijacking your question, but are you of a mind? I've chatted with people who had this conversation, because that kind of question comes up quite a lot, and you're like, right. Some people go, right, regardless, no matter how it's going, how bad I feel, how tired I am, 9 o'clock every morning, Word document, bam, you have to fight. This is not. That's what it is. This is a craft, right? I'm not that.
Yeah.
Are you that? Are you part of that? Are you?
No. That's why this project software that I talk about things is in my pocket, is in my iPad, and I wrote my last book of poems, which hopefully will be published last year. I wrote all of it on that thing, so in my pocket, on the go. It's because I didn't want it to feel like real work. Like I'm not writing properly. I'm just twiddling my thumbs.
These are ideas.
These are my ideas, and it just developed that way. So I'm never bank. I find I was going to use the word liminal, which is so wanky. But I just find little moments, little in-between times where there's just something, and I just write a
becomes accumulative.
Sentence. Yeah.
Because that's so satisfying, isn't it? When you get to go, look, look how
It's a
much is
thing,
there.
yeah,
Look how
yeah.
much is there. That wasn't almost. It's almost like that sounds quite sneaky. You were talking about out clevering yourself before.
Yeah.
Like, that's like a little sneaky ninja
Yeah,
move of like, right.
yeah.
Do you write bigger stuff like that too, or just the poems?
Some bigger stuff. Sometimes it's just a scene and it's part of a bigger
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. But if ever I have to write like a proper, then I have to be at my desk and think of it. But even then, I just try and eke out an hour here or here and then
I
just do
can't
so.
do the thing. My brain will go, oh, right, mate.
Yeah.
You're going to write now, are you? Mr. Big Writer. Go on then, write a thing. Oh, look, I'm still blinking. Nothing been written. You're rubbish. Go home. I am home. Okay. And so do you know what I mean? It's like, I think it's one of those things where like long ago, like I like, it feels like I like the fight. I like the rebelliousness of it. It's just nonsense. I like going, right, I should write all today. Not gonna.
Never happened.
I'm gonna watch a couple of episodes of something. Right, I'm going to go and just play with the cat for a bit. I'm going to plan dinner. I'm going to make a big thing to eat.
Then it comes,
right, and then we do some tonight. Right, and then sometimes you get tonight and it doesn't happen at all. Right, and then you get to the next day, you're like, no, it's fine. I'm going to write. No, I'm not. But then I find that then I'll go and play football on a Sunday. And on the way home, after football, it takes me like an hour and a bit to get home. All of it.
Yeah.
In some form, or at least something that feels like, if it's a change of direction, if it's a certain thing, will happen. It's like, it's almost so cliche or so annoying that your body's like, nah, mate, you're not in control. It's like something,
It's us.
do you know what I mean? I don't know what that means. It's almost like never head on with writer's block, never. Just go and make a sandwich, man. Do you know what I mean? Go make a sandwich. Go like call somebody up. If it's like my brain, if I think I'm trying to attack something directly, it genuinely has never in my entire life happened. Everything has felt tangential, even if it's manipulative and like I'm kidding myself, really. Do you know what I mean? As simple as going for the walk. On the way back, something just lands. And I think we can romanticize the idea of like, right, you have to put in the thing to get the thing. Maybe you do.
Like the craziest version of this was I was commissioned by this hotel in America to write a bunch of poems they're going to put on like pillows and stuff.
Whoa. You were commissioned by a hotel in America to put poems on pillows.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Mate.
But I was like, I said yes to the commission because there was some money and I needed it. But I had no clue what to write or how to write. So I remember it was coming up to my deadline. The lady was, do you have something for me? And I was on my way to the Notting Hill Carnival. And she was emailing me from America. And I had to respond in like half an hour because that's my deadline. So I remember putting it off and the idea came to me. And I jumped into a bush and typed it on my phone. That's when it came. And then I emailed her, jumped out and just carried on to the carnival. Yeah, that's the craziest one where just nothing was happening.
Everything about that is crazy. Every single part of that is crazy. I might even steal that. And just say that happened to me. Maybe they're not streaming. Sorry if you're streaming. Sorry. But awesome.
That's the craziest
Sorry,
one.
that was quite a long... that's awesome. Imagine you could just jump into a bush and that's where the ideas were all the time. You just find a box of magazines or something. Anyway, right. Does anyone else have a question that would like to ask at all?
Did you say find a box of magazines?
I don't know, man. Yeah? Yes, hi. Chuck it. Do you mind chucking it? Sorry. All right. Nice. Strong.
So you talked a bit about having to sometimes do stuff just to pay the bills and that. Did you find it especially tough starting out, actually making a living? Like, was it a long time before you could actually dedicate all your time to writing?
Yeah.
Sorry, man. I met him in 2005.
Yeah. In Glastonbury.
Yeah. Like, that's what, 14 years?
Yeah.
Still a juggle now. But like, sorry.
Yeah, it's and there's not like a moment. The precarious nature of what we do is there's not even like this moment where you go, oh, thank God, it's done now. Like there's like I couldn't even pinpoint really the point where it was like, oh, cool, this is my job. Because when for that first little period of I'm only doing this for money now, then like it doesn't feel like necessarily that's the way it's going to be forever, and it still doesn't.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that weirdly, I think we have an unhealthy obsession with placing a kind of cultural value on work that is professionalized, right? In reality, Yeah, like in reality, we're all spending so much time not doing the thing in order to finance doing the thing. And if you're like a full-time professional writer or whatever, that is like just being engaged in the hustle. That's like all the meetings, that's all the pitching stuff, that's all of the writing that isn't really writing, of like pitch documents and all of this. Like so much of your working life isn't actually working, right? And broadly, this is maybe a bit of a fudge, but when you weigh it up, that amount of time that's spent like not really doing the thing is probably the same amount of time spent not really doing the thing when you're holding down a bar job and then doing the thing. It's like we're all under this, without getting too highfalutin, under this economic system, we're all doing a load of work that's not writing in order to finance writing, regardless of whether you're a professional writer or not, I think. And anyway, in any case, it could always change any minute because it's so precarious, which is part of how you end up in situations where you have like maybe more stuff going on than is actually creatively useful, because you have this kind of addicted to this like way of being like, oh, I need to say yes to that, I need to say yes to that, I need to say yes to that, out of a kind of fear of like there not being enough stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So yeah, it's like it takes a while. It can take a long time before, but then it can take a long time before anything. Like Carol Churchill didn't write a play until she was in her 40s. Do you know what I mean? Like
John Malkovich didn't start acting until he was in his 40s.
Yeah.
But I think the tricky thing is now, and I think everything gets harder now because everyone is more aware of people's stories, what worked, what didn't work, who is successful, and not only that they're aware of it, everything that's presented is a version that looks like it was just meant to be. Do you know what I mean? Like I stumbled into like writing short pieces, and then somebody saw it and called it something before I even knew what it was.
Yeah.
And it's that weird thing of, because we're more aware of it now, and we're also really more aware of the professionalization. You get people saying things, I'm going to do the poetry thing for a bit.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. Fine. But if you are planning this, that's like trying to plan the weather.
Yeah, totally.
So you're like, right, mate, it's really not going to be sunny in December, right? So don't plan for summer in December, right? Just enjoy the weather.
Now.
You know, and I think there's a kind of weird thing of the only thing I know for sure that kind of got me a leg up at the beginning was not looking. Genuinely not looking. And that at the time was my own ignorance because I didn't know how to work the internet or whatever. But like it was like, I didn't look. If I'd have looked, I'm convinced a tiny bit of the influence of what was and what worked and what didn't work would have affected me in a way that would have either made it seem like it had already been done, or it would have been, do you know what I mean? Like what I'm trying to say is that sense of like, right, what part of it gets you going? Okay, right now, if I'm really honest, what form am I really most excited about taking in? Am I reading more than I'm looking at the screen? Am I looking at the screen more than that at this moment in time? I think I'm going to go with that form, because that's the one that makes the most sense. Right, a thing, finish a thing. Do you know what I mean? Everybody starts, not everybody finishes. You finish a thing, and then you can go like that, and if you're lucky, someone goes, wicked, we'll do something with this. Can you do another one? Right? And then you can either do another one or not. But if you don't ever finish a thing, it's genuinely just a conversation. And that's all I have to say about that.
You just really can't plan. I think that's it. And then other influences come, and you just hope that however far they pull you, they take you back to yourself. But part of that journey is figuring out who yourself is, right? And when I started, my first thing I did, I was 4 years old, was planning a city.
4?
Yeah, and I segregated it. Like the boys were on one side and the girls were on one side. I was a stupid kid. But because my father liked it, I thought, bang, I'm going to be a city planner when I grow up. And then I just wanted to be an architect. And then I worked at an architectural firm, and I realized they were all depressed because they just drew rectangles instead of built the fancy buildings. And then I thought, screw that, I'm going to become a visual artist because I can just paint freely. And then I thought, I'm going to be a graphic designer because people can pay me to paint freely. And then when I came back to London, I couldn't afford to go to university to study graphic design. And I started writing because I could just write down the images in my head. And then that became poetry. Yeah. And I began to write long poems, which became theater. And I began to write other things for other people to tell those long poems. And it became plays. Then I began to write those plays as pictures, which became screenplays, and then it becomes graphic novels again, which is what I tried to do when I was a kid. So that's the journey, but I didn't plan any of it at all. It just fell apart that way.
Likewise, I said earlier, I never set out to be a playwright. Like I was making weird performance art with like other like students. Do you know what I mean? And then I ended up making a solo show because that sort of community disbanded the way people do after university, and everyone went to different places and did different stuff. And I was kind of left going, well, I don't know how to do this. I just do it myself then. So I just made a solo show that ended up having like a kind of narrative through it, and then other people called that a play. I had no idea that what I'd done was written a play, no idea whatsoever. So then I thought, well, I better do another one to find out if that was a fluke or not, because it went all right. So I did another one a bit like that, and then that was the one that was called, that I mentioned earlier, that was called Beats, and that has got adapted into a film. Like, I never set out to, do you know what I mean? And you get folk, I think you do see people these days, like on the Edinburgh Fringe and stuff, like making a solo show that they're kind of hoping will be 6-part comedy drama ready. And you're like, do you know what I mean? Because they want to do a Fleabag or something. And it's like, that's never going to work. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just that you need to make the thing for the point of making the thing. None of this, actually, the last 5 minutes of this chat is a direct answer to your question, which was simply...
Is indicative of the
And what's
process.
even weirder, we really enjoyed it not being an actor. Sorry.
But the answer to your question was, did it take a long time to start getting paid for this? And the short answer is yeah.
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 Do you remember what you did with the first time you got paid for a writing thing?
Oh my God, it was 15 quid. And what did I do? I think I probably went to McDonald's. It was like a date as well.
Yo! That's a good night.
Yeah.
That's a
there you
good
go.
night.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have a story as good as that. Let's
Oh,
move on.
Okay, well, does anyone else have a question? Because I'm conscious that we've kind of run out of time. Do you mind? Is that all right? Quickly, sorry. They might stop filming, but it's all right. Go on.
I was just going to ask about character and dialogue.
Ooh.
If you have to write a character that's quite alien to yourself, if you had to write about a racist football hooligan, would you go out and seek that type of person to get their voice and their character, or would you use your imagination?
Okay, go on.
I think there's a big thing. I feel if I'm writing someone whose life experience is really different from mine in a social context that's maybe different from my own immediate experiences, that's a big, maybe not with writing a racist football hooligan, but like writing across cultures and writing across experiences and stuff is a big debate amongst writers right now to do with like cultural appropriation and stuff like that. And like for me, my take on that stuff would always broadly be that like it's reductive to suggest that a writer can only write their own experience, because a writer's job is to imagine worlds beyond their own on some level, right? But that said, that it's important to imagine empathetically and with rigor and with respect, and the way that respect is manifest is with research and understanding. And so like I think if I'm writing a character voice, a character whose experience is quite removed from mine, then like the two big sort of buzzwords around how to try and navigate all that's difficult about that was like research and empathy, right? Like, that said, I do think I've written characters that are really quite different from me, that have come really quite quickly and naturally, and I feel like at ease with their authenticity because they've come from something that's really deep within me in terms of my own childhood and experience or whatever. So like if I've written, like this story has like a 14-year-old girl in it, right? And I'm not a 14-year-old girl, right? But I didn't go out and hang out with loads of like teenagers, right, to make that. I just was a teenager. And I just like, and it's not like I'd never met a girl when I was a teenager, no matter how much it felt like that when I was a teenager. So like, do you know what I mean? So it depends. Yeah, I think sometimes if I identify this requires research and a bit of rigor from me for me to be able to earn the right to do it, then I'll try and identify that and set out to do that.
Yeah,
Like,
I think I'd say the same thing. Just lots and lots of research and time and empathy and trying to find yourself within the character, because the truth is no one is entirely alien from us, right? We breathe the same way. We're of this country, of this exact moment in time, and you can find cultural standpoints that you both reflect and use that to find a seed. But Half God of Rainfall is really about sexual violence, and a woman was exploited and was beaten up and was sexually abused. And not only did I have to read some pretty horrific things, I had to interview some people, some women, and there was a lot of trust and really delicate conversations involved in that. And I had to earn their trust, and they had to trust me. We were through the process of just back and forth of conversation and meeting. Some of them were friends of mine. Some of them were friends who asked me to speak to their friends and introduce me. But it was a whole lot of research and trying to put myself in their shoes. And that's where it begins, with empathy and understanding and just lots of time. With Barbershop Chronicles, the play is set in 6 different African countries. And I thought, I'm an African. Like, I was born in Nigeria. I know what the hell I'm talking about. I didn't. I needed to travel to all of those countries and meet all of those men. And it took a lot of time, and it was expensive, but I could not have written the play otherwise. So, yeah, just research, time, empathy, like you said.
yeah.
I'm conscious of time. By that, I mean we've run out of time. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you very much, Kieran. Thank you very much, Inua. Right? Thank you for the questions. We'll be milling around a little bit, I guess, if you want to ask one and we've run out. Bye, streamers. Thank you for streaming. We're going to stop. Is everyone all right? Yeah. That was fun, man. Nice one.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having
very
us,
much.
man. Thank you.